In this video, we will try and understand the Korea War, all about the Korea War, what happens during the Korea War, and what are the certain reasons through which the Korea War occurred in the world. Along with this, we will also discuss when it started and when it ended. So, all about this we are going to learn. Without further ado, let's dive into deep. Korea War started from the June 25th, 1950 to June 27, 1953. Almost it run in the world, it ran in the world for 3 years. Basically, if we dive into the history, it basically run for 1 year and 2 years for negotiations. As we know that after the World War II, the world was divided into two superpowers, Soviet power and the other one, the USA power. And when the USA dropped the nuclear bomb upon the Japan countries, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so the total Japan Empire was dismantled, and the Korea was a region which was under the control of Japan. So if the whole Japan was dismantled, there was no choice of the Korea. Then what happened with the Korea? The Korea was divided into two parts. One part was for the USSR and the other for the USA. The Soviet Union take the north part while the South Korea took by the USA. And the line of demarcation between these two countries is known as the 38th parallel. No need to discuss over here is that the South Korea the South Korea was controlled by the USA and which was having the capitalist regime, and North Korea was governed by the Soviet Union, which was having the communist regime. So the government in the North and South Korea was fully backed by these superpower countries at that time. The incidence of North Korea war is known as the first military action during the Cold War. What happens initially, almost 78,000 soldiers from the North Korean regime, they crossed the 38th parallel and entered into the South Korea. From there the war started. The US sent its troops in the South Korea to back the soldiers over there. In the initial point, we see that the uh, the American the American soldiers over there were very frightened, and they were confused, and they were ill equipped. Along with this, the North Korean army was well equipped, well disciplined, and their morals were very high as well. And in the initial point, they were succeeding and they were winning the war. And then the North Korean army pushed into Seoul, which is the capital of the South Korea. They entered into that, and US reached its troops for a war against communism itself. And then what happens, there was the changed in their mindset. The Truman, the president of at the time of the USA, and Douglas MacArthur, who was the general secretary, had decided to liberate the north from the communists. Initially they were only having the incentive to make the North Korean army out from their country, but now they wanted the Korea free from the communist regime. So what they did, they landed their armies through which is known as the amphibian assault in the area of lnch'on landing. South Korean army pushed the North Korean army out from Seoul and the 38th parallel as well. American troops crossed the boundary and headed toward the north side of the Yalu River. And as we know that Yalu River is a boundary between the North Korea and the China. And therefore, the China warned the USA not to come further, because if they continued their exercises, their military exercises, then the China can ignite the full out war. That is the thing that the Truman and his advisors did not want. But the General MacArthur wanted the full scale war, and he did everything to provoke that. He sent letter to Joseph Martin, who was the Republican leader, and he shared the MacArthur supports for all out war on China. He wrote a letter, and in this he write no subsidy for victory. It means he won't want anything to occur to impede in the road of their victory. But the Truman fired that journal their General MacArthur for insubordination, because they did not wanted the war, because the world have already saw the much havoc in case of World War II and World War One. So in 1951, the peace talks started in Panmunjom, and in they were all willing to accept the ceasefire, but there was a problem of the POW. POW stands for people. Uh, POW stands for the prisoner of war, because it was taking the hindrance in toward the ceasefire. So the USA and the Chinese, there was a different opinion of the USA and the Chinese and North Korean upon that. The Chinese and North Korea wanted to put the prisoner of war forcibly. They provide the prisoner of wars forcibly repatriated, but on the other hand, the USA did not want so. And in that case, the negotiation won for two countries, and later the armistice was made. And at the end, what the decision was take, the decision was wherever the prisoner of war wanted, they can stay over there. And there was the new boundary which was drawn, and the South Korea also gained 1500 square miles land, more than the first, and a 2 miles wide demilitarized zone was created to not ignite that war again. This war is known as the Forgotten War in the US, because it is the war which was entirely forgotten, and the North Korean and South Korean peninsula are still divided today.